Welcome to Real Christianity. Today we are talking about the biblical perspective on homeschooling and the public school system. Guys, this is an important conversation, and you would think that Veronica would be here with me today, but she's not. We've had a couple hiccups on some scheduling stuff, and that's okay because, you know what? I'm actually the one that really initiated the homeschooling direction for our family. She is all on board on that, but I really do think that it's the dad's responsibility to direct and lead the family in terms of the education direction. And so men, pay attention. This isn't a woman's episode. This is both a men and woman's episode. And if you're not married or you don't have kids, still, I think this episode is going to be fruitful for you today. Veronica will be joining us for the next several episodes as we get kind of closer to closing off the year here. But today is an audio-only episode, so if you're a YouTube listener, sorry about that. You guys can still listen to it on audio on YouTube. But let's just dive in for a second here. If it's your first time listening to the show, welcome. If you're a regular listener to the Real Christianity podcast, we'd ask that you would leave us a review. If you haven't done it yet, I mean, we have, like the last time I checked, we have about 50,000 monthly listeners, and we have about 4,000 reviews. So there's a huge chunk, about 90% of you that haven't left a review yet. And, if you're interested, it would be really helpful. It really does help the exposure of the show. Right now, we are somewhere between number 40 and number 60 top religious and spiritual podcasts in the world. And that's a big deal because, this isn't just Christian. This is all religions. And there's actually, I believe, several 100,000 episodes or shows in that category. And I could have that wrong. There might be several 100,000 episodes. I think that's right. But there's, I think, 50,000 shows in that category. And so to be in the top 100 is a huge deal because it brings exposure to God's truth. When people start searching for Christianity, they find our episode because of the amount of reviews we have. So thank you guys so much for those that have left reviews. I read all of them, and they're so encouraging. So thank you for that. Another thing I wanted to mention, guys, last week's episode that Veronica and I did on the questions about marital sex issues, I hope that was edifying for you, and I hope that you are also considering our Ultimate Marriage program, our 6-week program. We get so many incredible testimonials. It is a biblical marriage program over 6 weeks. It's $199. It's not that much money. It helps people have a biblical understanding of marriage, roles, sex, kids, money, purpose. I mean, it is just a great program. We put a lot of effort into it, and we'd appreciate that if you guys could support our ministry by enrolling in that program. So if it's something that you need and you're also looking a way to support our ministry, Ultimate Marriage is a companion ministry of relearnchurch.org. Okay, today I'm going to attempt to unpack the biblical position for the homeschool versus public school debate. And as most of you guys know, we do homeschool our children. Aria is in a Christian homeschool co-op called Classical Conversations. And basically, Veronica follows a curriculum at home that's built on the classical education model, which is built on the Trivium. If you want to look it up, go for it. But we're big proponents of the classical education model. And then the kids and her meet up with all the other kids and the other moms once per week in town to learn the following week's lesson. And so I think it's cool because it gives Aria the sense of a classroom, because they do like a 1 day in the classroom with each other, and they get to celebrate, holidays and have friends from school and all at the same time while mom still is the teacher. And actually the person that's teaching the class is actually called a tutor, and they're tutoring the mom, and the kids get to share their projects and they get to give speeches in front of the class. And it's really awesome. So we really appreciate Classical Conversations. You probably have one in your area. If you're looking for that, it's kind of like you get to homeschool without being alone. And so I really appreciate their model. Now, there's two important things to know before we get started. First, I was raised in the public school for my entire education. So I'm preaching today from conviction, not from loyalty or personal experience to the public school system or anything like that. Second, I do not believe the Bible directly condemns public school or affirms homeschooling, but really instead offers us a variety of scripture to help us form a wise decision around how our children are to be educated. And so let's just talk first about public school. Now, over the years, I should say Christians in the public school. The most common reasons I've heard Christians use to support their decision for enrolling their young children in public school, there's really three of them, and I'm gonna kind of recite them to you. The first one is they will be a light to their non-Christian friends. Number two is, we have to teach our children to be in the world, not of the world. And number three is we can't keep them in a bubble forever. They need to develop real-world people skills. So in my experience, the most common reasons or scripture that these Christian parents offer to support their decisions are like this is the doctrine they're using to support those three reasons. It's Matthew 5:16. It says, "Let your light shine before men." Matthew 5:13 says, "You are the salt of the earth." John 15:19, "Be in the world, not of the world." These are the doctrines or the scriptures that they're kind of at the foundation of these reasons. And I believe most parents get mixed up, and they forget that these instructions were not instructions written to children, but they're written to adults. And if you read the scriptures, you know that Jesus nor any of the apostles sent young children out to evangelize or to disciple or to be missionaries or to be iron sharpening iron in another child's life. This doesn't mean, however, that your child can't share the gospel, and some do. But there's a difference between a child sharing the gospel within the safety of their private life and a child being sent on mission at 7 years old into a hostile cultural environment to be a light to those around them. Now, let me remind you what Jesus says regarding the leadership of children. And this is an important verse. I want you to pay attention here. It's Matthew 18:6, and he says, "But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be better for him to have a millstone wrapped around his neck and he be drowned in the sea." Now, when Jesus says little ones, I don't think he's specifically and solely talking about children, but to all who are young in their faith, which is for sure the posture of every young child. I mean, essentially, the warning is to not purposefully choose to put those who are underdeveloped in their faith in a place of hostility, temptation, moral confusion, or worldly seduction. I would say that Jesus is saying, be super careful that you don't falter one of these little ones, because if you do, it's better that you just drown in the sea or die right now than the punishment and pain that you're going to experience when you stand before me. Jesus really cares about his little lambs, and if we lead them astray under false things, I think even as a believer, you're still going to stand before the Lord and give an account for everything you did. Even if you actually get saved, in terms of you're saved, you're still going to have to answer for these bad decisions. And so, having said that, and really with reviewing the general state of our public school system, a system which teaches anti-biblical sexuality, false scientific teachings about creation and biology, emotional morality, and really an overall philosophy designed to work against the values and positions of the Christian family. The scripture in Matthew with Jesus talking should at the very least cause Christian parents to re-examine their thinking. And if you're still on the fence, I'm going to put it another way for you. I'm going to give you kind of an illustration here. I want you to imagine a family who is decidedly atheist and devotedly liberal in their politics. Okay, just imagine this family. And a family, they support the open interpretation of marriage, the abortion of babies, a fluid view of gender, They're a proponent of evolution. Now imagine that this family, they work diligently to teach these values to their children by taking them to political protests, allowing them to watch documentaries and read books that support their beliefs. Now, what do you believe the chances are of that family allowing their young and impressionable children to spend 8 hours per day, 5 days per week for 13 years being educated by a decidedly Christian and devotedly conservative school? A school that teaches children that evolution is false and creation is true. A school that teaches the biblical model for marriage, life, and gender, and what basically their parents have taught them is actually a lie or false. A school that has their students practice prayer, watch documentaries and read books that support their Christian beliefs. What are the chances of that atheist and politically liberal family allowing their children to attend that Christian and devotedly conservative school? I'll give you the answer. 0. The chances are 0. So having said that, why then would a decidedly Christian family with biblical values choose to place their in a decidedly atheist and devotedly liberal public school system? Like, why would a Christian family choose to put their kids for 8 hours a day, 5 days per week for 13 years into an education system that opposes and teaches against the very foundational values of their Christian faith? Now, when you look at it from this perspective, it sounds almost silly, right? But that's what's occurring today. Millions of Christian families are choosing to place their children against Jesus' strong warning in Scripture in the public school system. Now, I do understand that some Christian families simply can't afford to homeschool or private school their children. I also understand that not all schools and all teachers are immoral or unbiblical, and there are still some upstanding faculties in decent public schools out there. But these are the exceptions, and they're not the mainstream rule here. And in speaking to the public school system really as a whole, especially America's public school system, it's not getting better. It's not getting safer. It's not getting holier. Okay, just this year in California, the state legislation unanimously approved public schools to have a curriculum for teaching kindergartners about gender identity and personal options within that idea. And middle schoolers get to learn about masturbation, oral sex, anal sex. In Florida, just this year, a girl decided to walk into the boys' locker room while the boys were fully undressed, and the male teacher that was in there wasn't legally allowed to take any action at all. And I actually read the story on the newamerican.com website, and actually continues to say, and I'm going to quote this, it says, "School officials ordered the teacher to be in the boys' locker room while the girl was changing and could have been showering. Obviously, he refused, saying he could not knowingly place himself in a position where he would, quote, observe a minor female in the nude or otherwise in a state of undress," end quote. In saner places, I'm still within the main quote. In saner places, grown men are arrested and jailed for trying to watch underage girls change or shower. But in 2019, government schools in America, they can be ordered to do it. End quote. Okay, guys, this is a problem. I know this is just one example, but that philosophy is bleeding in everywhere. The article actually goes on to say, and another quote, says, in New York, schools were caught giving children handouts on sex change surgery, polyamory, which is relationships that include multiple partners, and what it means to be pansexual. Gender-confused teachers are now ordering their pupils to refer to them as gender neutral, pronouns such as mix, M-I-X, rather than miss. And it's not just happening, guys, in liberal states either. Conservative states are actually falling to this philosophy every single month. They're doing drag queen story hours and kindergartens all around the states. They're doing training for junior high on how to terminate unwanted pregnancies. Planned Parenthood, the Plan B pill. They're giving access to condoms and sexually instructive material on elementary and middle school campuses. It's literally nuts. And so, parents, don't be fooled. Satan is playing for keeps when it comes to your children, and he wants the hearts and minds of the little ones. He really does. Now, we have to remember that all education is discipleship. Okay, just hear me. I'm going to say it one more time. We must remember that all education is discipleship. And if you're sending your children to public school for 30 to 40 hours per week, how do you expect to out-disciple that? Like, do you think that 60 minutes of Sunday school and a few morning devotionals is going to compete? There's a really fascinating quote by atheist and communist Vladimir Lenin. He once said, quote, "Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted," end quote. And actually, the Bible backs up his claim. In Proverbs 22:6, it says, "Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it." And see, you can train your children, or the culture can train your children. But one thing is for sure, do not expect your child to depart from the things that they were taught. Whether they're true or whether they're not true, and whether they're moral or whether they're immoral. Okay, because outside of a very real encounter with Jesus in terms of a rebirth, God designed the human brain to lock in the lessons of early childhood. I've actually heard it explained that between the ages of 1 and 3, children are like wet clay. Between the ages of 4 and 7, they are moldable clay. 8 to 12, they are beginning to be difficult to shape. And age 13 to 18, they're generally shaped already, and only very small adjustments can be made, and most of the time by sanding or shaving off the unwanted portions. And so the development of who they are, what they believe, is taking place very young. By the time they're 10, the majority of that's already in place. And, again, people, if your child's currently in public school, I just want you to hear me when I say this. I'm not condemning you. You might feel convicted by the truth that's being said today, but that's separate from what I'm doing. I'm simply presenting a biblical perspective on the matter for you to consider. And we all have to determine how to navigate the life and family that God has laid out before us. And I also understand that there are always unique circumstances and special exceptions for some families. There's single parents. I get that. But, we have to be careful. One is because we love to believe that we're the exception. We love to make ourselves feel special, like, oh, I got a unique situation. So I'm just going to ask you a question. I want you to ask yourself, if your child's in public school, even if you think it's like, oh, our district's okay, is it really worth it? Is the potential loss of your child's spiritual footing really worth it? Is losing your child to the culture really worth it? Is risking your child's eternal security really worth it? And as parents, sometimes it requires us to just literally move heaven and earth to shield our children's hearts. Sometimes it requires us working nights and weekends, or quitting a job, or moving across the country, or finding a new place to call home. All of this to just withstand the enemy's efforts to distort and pervert our families. Paul tells us in the book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9, it says, "Let us not grow weary while doing good. For in due season we will reap if we do not lose heart. And so, Christian parents, raising godly children is fulfilling the Great Commission in your home. Okay, it's the work, I would say, of the utmost importance. It is absolutely saintly work raising these children and teaching these children. It's holy work. It's eternal work. And so I want you to get before the Lord and talk about it with him. Ask him what you should do. Be open to his response. And while Veronica's not here, she did tell me to say something. She said to remind you guys that homeschooling can be intimidating. But if God made you a mother, he also equipped you with everything you need to be that child's teacher. And you're going to need to learn and grow, but you are qualified to do so. And we also think that, public school is the same as homeschooling. Veronica does homeschooling 2 hours a day with the little ones. And so you don't have to think that, oh my gosh, how am I going to pull a 6-hour curriculum 5 days a week? Veronica does 2 hours a day, and that's enough. And as the kids get older, I'm sure that will change. But you get to ease in. And so don't be overwhelmed by that. There's also some fantastic classical education private schools, Christian schools, that are options too. But homeschooling is actually quite affordable. There's only some curriculum to pay for, way cheaper than private school. Something for you to consider and to pray over. Guys, we're going to close with that. 2020 is coming up, and we are excited for the things that we have before us. I'm coming out with another book on biblical church. We also are in the middle of redoing the entire website, and we have some fun announcements in terms of kind of refocusing our website, our curriculum on church planting. We have decided to start a biblical church planting school. And there are a lot of needs coming up, and we've already met our entire 2019 budget thanks to your generosity. But guys, it's closing up on the end of the year. You can do a tax-deductible gift. Would you guys consider just sit before the Lord and ask him what he would have you do? If you're interested in supporting us, we could use the funding to continue on in God's kingdom-building work. There are 3 people that I'd love to hire. We just don't have the budget for it yet. And so we would appreciate your generosity. That might be $10. It might be $10,000. We don't know. But we are so thankful for everybody that does give and has given. And so I just want to put that before you. You can always go to relearnchurch.org/donate. You can donate digitally. You can also get our mailing address to send us a check if you'd like that instead. On that note, guys, thank you guys so much for joining the episode today, and we will see you next week. Take care.